She gave shelter to a stranger. After his carriage broke, she did not know he was the king. Her grandmother used to say, "A roof offered in rain is worth more than a crown offered in sunshine." Maren Voss had grown up hearing that saying pressed into her like a thumb into soft bread, shaping her, leaving its mark. Her grandmother had meant it about wolves and packs, and the way powerful men like to be generous only when it costs them nothing. But Maren had taken it further. She had built her whole quiet life around it. The cottage, the garden, the bread she baked and left on the sill for travelers on the Ashford Road, the blanket folded on the bench outside for anyone cold enough to need it. She was not a powerful woman. She had no wolf, no pack, no standing in any hierarchy that mattered to the lords who ruled Thornmere. She was simply Maren. 23, alone since her grandmother's passing, living on the edge of Cold Hollow Wood, where the road curved and the foxglove grew wild against the stone fence. What she did not know, on the night the storm split the sky open and the carriage wheel shattered in her ditch, was that her grandmother's saying was about to be tested against something far larger than she had ever imagined. She only knew it was raining, and someone was outside. Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Storm. The storm had been building since midday, pressing down on the hills like a hand on a bruise. Maren had banked the fire early and set a pot of barley soup on the hook, more from instinct than expectation. She was not expecting company. Nobody ever came to Cold Hollow on purpose. She heard the crack first, a splitting sound sharp enough to cut through rain and thunder, and then the panicked snort of horses. She was already moving to the window, wiping condensation from the glass with her sleeve, before her mind had fully woken to what she was seeing. A carriage, or the ruin of one. It had lurched sideways into the ditch at the road's bend. The rear left wheel collapsed into broken spokes. The horses had been cut loose by someone capable enough to know what he was doing, and they stood trembling against the hedgerow, while the man who had freed them was already striding toward her gate. He was tall. That was the first thing she noticed. Tall and soaked completely through, his dark coat plastered to wide shoulders, his hair, black, past his ears, streaming water. He moved like someone accustomed to being obeyed by the landscape itself, though the landscape was clearly not cooperating tonight. Maren pulled her shawl around her and went to the door before he could knock. She always opened before people knocked. It was faster. She looked up at him. He was a full head taller, and then some, and he looked down at her, and for a moment the storm seemed to pause to observe them both. "My carriage is gone," he said. His voice was low, abraded at the edges, like good stone that had been worn smooth. "The road is impassable. I saw your light." "I see that." She stepped back. "Come in before you drown standing upright." He hesitated in the doorway. Just a breath of hesitation. The kind a person makes when they've never been ushered inside a small cottage by a small woman in a patched shawl before. And then he crossed the threshold. His name, he told her when she handed him a towel, was Calder. Just Calder. He said it the way people say things when they're leaving something off. But she didn't press. She was not in the habit of demanding more than people wished to give. "Maren Voss," she said in return, hanging his soaked coat by the fire on the iron hook usually reserved for her bundles. He sat where she pointed, the chair by the hearth, the better one with the padded seat, and looked around her cottage with the careful attention of someone cataloging something unfamiliar. She watched him take in the braided rugs, the dried lavender, the row of cracked-spine books on the shelf above the bread box, the single good oil lamp she kept trimmed and burning. "You live alone," he said. It was not a question, but it was not unkind. "I do." She ladled soup. "Does that trouble you?" "On the contrary." He accepted the bowl she held out. "It explains why the light was on." She sat across from him with her own bowl, and they ate in the kind of silence that is not uncomfortable. The silence of a fire doing its work, and rain doing its worst outside, and two people warm and fed against it. Chapter 2. What he did not say. She gave him her grandmother's room. There was nowhere else. The cottage had 2 rooms, and she was not putting a stranger in with herself, broad shoulders or not. She built up the small hearth in there and left him a candle and a folded nightshirt that had been her grandfather's, which was too short in the leg by half, but was clean and dry. She did not apologize for its inadequacy. She simply left it. She went to sleep listening to the rain soften. In the morning she woke to find him already up, already dressed in his own clothes. Dry now, she noted, he must have been up before dawn to retrieve them from the fireside, and standing at the window, watching the road. His posture in the gray light was extraordinary. She had seen pack leaders stand that way, though she had no wolf of her own, and had learned the body language the way a person who has never spoken a language still learns to recognize its rhythms. It was the posture of a man who had spent his life being looked at from a distance. She made tea. He turned from the window when she set the cup on the table, and she caught the tail end of an expression crossing his face. Something startled, almost, as if the simple act of a cup being placed for him still registered as remarkable. "The road?" she asked. "Passable by midday, I think. The flooding will drain." He sat. "I've sent the horses on to the village with a message. Someone will come." She didn't ask how he'd sent a message. She assumed there were things a man like this, careful, composed, with gold thread at his cuffs that she had noticed and chosen not to mention, could arrange that she could not. "You can stay until then." She cut bread. "I won't charge you." His hands closed around the cup. "I wouldn't have assumed otherwise." "Some do assume otherwise," she said mildly. "They see a woman alone and think the hospitality must have a price attached." She looked at him directly. "So I say it plainly, to spare us both the awkwardness." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're remarkably direct." "I'm remarkably poor," she said, and smiled to take the bite out of it. "It amounts to the same thing. No position to be anything but honest." Something moved behind his dark eyes, a quality of attention that was almost uncomfortable in its focus, as if he were actually hearing her, rather than waiting for her to finish so he could speak. She pushed the bread toward him and went to check her garden. Chapter 3. A morning made of small things. The sky after the storm was the particular shade of clean that felt earned. Marin moved through her garden, pulling the debris the rain had laid down, snapped foxglove stems, a nest disturbed from the lavender hedge, a scatter of green plums torn before their time. She was crouched over the vegetable bed when his shadow fell across her. "May I?" He was holding his sleeves rolled back, which struck her as the right instinct. The gold cuffs were folded out of the way. She handed him a spare trowel without ceremony. They worked for an hour in the garden. He was not incompetent, which surprised her. He worked carefully, following her lead, replanting what could be saved, clearing what couldn't. He asked about the herbs by name, not for show, but with genuine attention, holding a sprig of lemon thyme between his fingers, and breathing it in like something he was trying to memorize. "You know herbcraft?" she asked. "I know the names. He paused, choosing something. "Someone I respected kept a garden. I was taught to respect what it produces." She noted the pause. She let it be. What she was not letting herself think about, because she was a practical woman who had survived alone in Cold Hollow by staying practical, was how the morning felt. How it felt to move in her garden with someone beside her who matched her silence, who did not fill every quiet with noise, who lifted the heavier pot without being asked, and set it where she'd been moving it to without her having to explain. She was not thinking about how dark his eyes were in daylight. Almost amber at the outer ring, she'd noticed, which was a wolf's tell, though she would never be so rude as to ask a stranger's nature, or the way his shoulders moved. She was not thinking about any of that. She was thinking about her fence post, which the storm had knocked askew. "That'll need resetting," she said. "I'll do it." He was already walking toward it. She opened her mouth to say he didn't have to, and then closed it again because he was already doing it, and because there was something in his manner that suggested that saying "you don't have to" him would be heard as an insult. So she went inside and made lunch instead. Chapter 4. The Company of Equals. He stayed through lunch and then through the afternoon, because the men from the village did not arrive until the third bell past noon, and she wasn't going to put him out to stand on the road. She found him, between the fence post and the arrival, sitting on the low stone wall behind the cottage with one of her books open on his knee. Not looking at it, though. Looking at the wood's edge, where the old oaks grew so thick their roots had humped the earth into strange shapes. "Cold Hollow," he said when she sat beside him. "Does the name trouble you? Living at the edge of it?" "My grandmother named the cottage, not the wood." She tucked her feet up beneath her on the wall. "I grew up being told the wood was full of old pack spirits." She didn't mean it as a warning. She meant it as a comfort. As if something old was looking out. "And do you believe that?" "I believe the wood has seen more than I have," she said. "That seems like enough." A pause. He closed the book, carefully, she noticed, the way you close someone else's book, with respect, and held it in both hands. "Do you never feel—" He stopped, reconsidered. "You are wolfless." He said it quietly, not as cruelty, as observation. "I am." She met his look steadily. "The pack in Thornmere Village knows. They've made their feelings about my living here quite plain. It doesn't change anything. The cottage is mine. The garden is mine. Do they trouble you?" "They condescend, which is its own kind of trouble, but not the dangerous kind." He was looking at her with that focused attention again, and this time she felt it land somewhere below her ribs. She looked away first, which she almost never did. "You have worth," he said very simply, as if stating a basic fact about the physical world. That should be plain to anyone looking. It was so unadorned that she felt it more keenly than any ornament would have carried it. She kept her eyes on the wood's edge and said, "You're kind." "I'm not, particularly." His voice was dry. "I'm accurate." She laughed. It surprised her, the real kind of laugh, not the polite kind. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. When she glanced back at him, he was watching her laugh the way a person watches something they've been hungry for without knowing it. She stood up and went back inside. She was still being practical. Chapter 5. The Men from the Village. They came on horseback, 4 of them, with a replacement wheel and a spare carriage rig. They came with pack markings on their cloaks, Thornmere pack colors, black and red, and they came riding fast, with an urgency that made Marin's stomach tighten. She watched from the doorway. The man who rode first she recognized. Aldrich Bane, the Thornmere pack's enforcer. Thick through the neck, silver at his temples. Contempt worn so long on his face, it had become simply his face. He had come to her cottage twice before to tell her, in the nicest possible language, that a wolfless woman living on pack-adjacent land was a resource problem, and perhaps she should consider the village poorhouse, where she would be less of a liability. He pulled up his horse and looked at Calder, who was standing in the garden now, in his dry coat, his cuffs back down, every inch of him composed. Aldrich Bane went the color of candle wax. He dismounted so fast he nearly stumbled, and then he bent at the waist in a buo that was not casual. The other 3 men followed instantly, their horses shifting at the sudden tension in their riders. "My king," Aldrich Bane said, and even from the doorway Morin heard the way his voice had thinned. "We came as quickly as we didn't know, the message only said—" "I know what the message said." Calder's voice was even. It was the most completely even voice Morin had ever heard, which meant that underneath it, something was being held, very still. "You may load the wheel. We'll leave when it's done." "My king." Marin stood in her doorway and let those 2 words rearrange every room in her mind. She looked at Calder, the king, apparently, which was a piece of information she was going to have to do something with. He had turned slightly and was looking at her now. His expression was unreadable, except for the quality she'd been watching all day. That complete, focused attention. On her. She went inside. She had bread that needed pulling from the oven, which was real. She focused on that. He came in shortly after. "You didn't tell me," she said. She was pulling the bread with the cloth, her back half to him. She kept her voice level. It was not difficult. She had practice. "I didn't." He stood near the table. "I apologize." "Were you testing me?" She turned now, bread on the board, and looked at him directly. Something moved through his expression, fast, and then gone. No, I was... He stopped, started again. I have not spent a morning in a garden, or an afternoon on a wall reading, or a night that was simply quiet, in longer than I can calculate. I knew if you knew, you would change. Change how? Into someone performing hospitality at a king, he said, rather than simply offering it. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned back to the bread and cut 2 slices. Well, she said, you've eaten at my table. You've reset my fence post. I think the formalities can stay out in the road with the carriage. She heard his exhale. It was the sound of a man who had been holding something tightly for much longer than one night. Chapter 6. What Aldrich Bane said. She carried a jar of the preserves, the plum, which was her best, out to the road while the men were fixing the carriage, because she was not going to stand in her kitchen hiding. That was not who she was. Aldrich Bane found her there. He separated himself from the others and came to stand beside her with the manner of a man who has been embarrassed and intends to distribute the embarrassment more evenly. You should have sent word immediately. His voice was low. The moment a stranger arrived. You have no pack. You have no right to offer shelter to... I offered shelter to a person in a storm, she said. She was watching the carriage. There is no law against that. You've threatened my cottage twice with your pack council's authority, and both times you were wrong about your own law. I checked. A pause. She could feel his anger like heat from a bad fire. A wolfless woman alone here is what? She looked at him now, and she kept her voice pleasant with the same deliberateness a person uses to keep a flame steady in wind. Dangerous? An eyesore? A problem to be relocated? You've tried all 3 versions, Aldrich Bane. I've noticed you run out of arguments before I run out of patience. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked past her at the cottage, and then at the king, who had emerged from the gate and was watching this exchange with that very still quality she now recognized as a held still something large. Aldrich Bane stepped back, then further back. Then he went to help with the carriage wheel with considerable enthusiasm. Calder came to stand beside her. You knew he'd done that, she said. Before. Threatened you? I learned it this morning. His voice was quiet. From the way you talked about the pack's condescension, I recognized the specific shape of it. She turned the jar of preserves in her hands. What will happen to him? A thorough review of his conduct. A pause. And a correction in the land records, which I understand may affect certain claims made about property adjacent to Cold Hollow Wood. She felt something shift in her chest. She tamped it down carefully because she was practical, and kings drove away in carriages. You don't have to do that for me, she said. I know. He was looking at her. That's precisely why I'm doing it. Chapter 7. The Leaving. They loaded the repaired carriage in the gold hour before evening, the sky going amber at its edges, the foxglove bright in the aftermath light. She had packed the rest of the bread in cloth. Because he hadn't finished lunch, he'd gone to the road when Bane arrived, and it seemed wasteful to leave good bread. She had packed the jar of plum preserves as well. She told herself it was simply that they would keep. He came to her gate while his men were hitching the horses. He was all king now. She could see it, the thing he'd been holding underneath the morning. But the morning was still in him too, if she knew how to look. And she found, uncomfortably, that she did know how to look. He held out his hand. In it was a small object, a coin, but not any coin she'd seen. It was dark gold, worn smooth on one face, with a relief on the other so rubbed by handling that she had to tilt it to the light. A wolf, mid-leap, and above it, a crown. It's been in my coat pocket since my coronation, he said. I carry it. I don't know why I carry it. I just always have. He met her eyes. I would like you to have it. She looked at the coin. She looked at him. That seems like something you'll regret, she said. I've given thought to the things I'll regret, he said, "and this is not one of them." She took the coin. It was warm, not from the evening, from him. She closed her fingers around it. "Safe roads," she said. It was the blessing her grandmother had always used. "Safe roads," he echoed, and then quiet enough that his men could not hear. "I will come back. I want you to know that, so you can decide what to do with the knowing." She held the coin tight. She watched the carriage go until it was gone past the road's bend, and the foxglove swallowed the sound of the wheels. Then she went inside and put the coin on the sill beside her oil lamp, where the light could find it. Chapter 8. The quiet. After winter came like a slow closing. Maren kept her garden, kept her bread on the sill, kept the blanket on the bench. She was the same. The days were the same. And yet everything had the quality of a page that has been written on and imperfectly erased. The original is still there, underneath, changing the texture of everything above it. A letter came in October, by royal courier, an actual courier with pack markings she didn't recognize. Thornmeres weren't carried anymore in her part of the road, which she noted without surprise. The letter was brief. It said that the land records for the property bounded by Cold Hollow Wood had been formally corrected, that the cottage and its adjacent acre were registered in the name of Maren Voss in perpetuity, and that any further action by the Thornmere Pack Council regarding said property had been formally prohibited. Below the official language, in different handwriting, the same handwriting she might have seen in the margin of a book left on a wall, were 3 words: "The lemon time." That was all. She pressed the letter flat between the pages of the thickest book she owned. In November she received a cart of firewood, which arrived without explanation, and in December a small case of oil for the lamp. She did not write back. She did not know if she was supposed to. She spent the winter deciding what to do with the knowing, which was exactly what he had told her to do. She decided, by February, that she was in love with him. She put that in the category of impractical true things, and kept going. Aldrich Bain, she heard from the village, had been removed from his enforcer post and reassigned somewhere involving considerable paperwork and no authority over anything. She felt regarding this nothing but a mild satisfaction that justice had a specific weight when properly applied. Spring came. She planted the garden. She kept the coin on the sill. Epilogue. 1 year after the storm. She heard the carriage before she saw it, a different carriage this time, smaller, quieter, without the full retinue she might have expected. Just 2 riders flanking, and the creak of wheels on the dry summer road. She was in the garden. Of course she was in the garden. She did not go to the gate. She heard the gate open. She turned. He looked, not different, but more of what he had been. Or perhaps she could simply see it more clearly now. The king posture and the morning in the garden posture were the same person, she saw, and she had the strange feeling that she'd been one of the only people who'd ever seen that. He was holding something. She recognized it. A jar, new, glass with a cloth top. Preserves. "Plum," he said. "The cook told me the variety. I'm not confident about the execution." She looked at the jar. She looked at him. "You came back," she said. "I said I would." "It's been a year." He stopped. Tried again. "A kingdom requires a great deal of one in a year. I dealt with it as fast as I could." A pause. "I thought about the lemon time." She felt the laugh coming. The real kind, and let it. She pressed her hand to her mouth for a moment, and then lowered it. She reached into her apron pocket and held out the coin. The dark gold caught the summer light, the wolf mid-leap, the worn crown above it. "I kept it on the sill," she said, "by the lamp." His expression did something she didn't quite have a name for, opened somehow. Like a door that has been shut so long, the hinges have stiffened, and now someone has pressed it, gently, from the right side. "My grandmother used to say," she told him, turning the coin in her fingers, "that a roof offered in rain is worth more than a crown offered in sunshine." She held the coin out, not to give it back, to show it to him. to show him that she'd held it all winter and all spring, and had not let it become something frightening. I think she meant it about powerful men who are only generous when it's easy, but I've spent a year thinking it means something else too. What does it mean? It means, she met his eyes, that what you give when you have nothing to gain by giving is the thing that tells the truth about you. She looked at the coin. You gave me this. You gave it when you didn't need my goodwill. You didn't even know if you'd come back. I knew, he said. I was simply giving you the choice. She closed her fingers around the coin again. Kept it. Then come in, she said. I'll make tea, and then you can tell me what a kingdom requires in a year, and I can tell you about my garden, and we'll see where that gets us. That sounds, he said, like a great deal more than I've had in a year. Good. She turned toward the cottage. Bring the preserves. We'll compare them to mine. She heard him follow her through the gate he'd reset the fence post for, a year ago, in the golden quiet of a storm's aftermath. She heard the latch close behind him. Inside, she put the coin back on the sill beside the lamp, where the afternoon light found it immediately. The wolf still leaping, the crown still worn to nearly nothing. A roof offered in rain is worth more than a crown offered in sunshine. Her grandmother had been right, as usual. Though Marin suspected her grandmother had never imagined a case in which you might end up with both. End.